Hello, World Wide Web. I'm Dagger Shado, the United Personality of the best hair, and it's time for The Thing. This is actually a lot more specific than it sounds. Of course, I'm referring to John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982. It's a quasi-remake of The Thing from Another World from 1951. Or rather, it's a movie version of the story that movie was based on, Who Goes There, by John W. Campbell in 1938. Where The Thing from Another World is a story about that time a US Air Force crew in Alaska saved the world from an alien plant monster, and the hero gets the girl in the end. The Thing is about a US science team in Antarctica who encounters a strange alien life form with the power to mimic its victims. You know, what the book was about. I'm saying there's no differences. I doubt the original book took place in 1982, but to say that this is a remake of the 1951 movie isn't really accurate. Also, to say that the new The Thing is a remake of this one also isn't accurate. That was actually a prequel. Whatever the case, our tale of terror follows a group of scientists as they do science in Antarctica. However, their experiments involving smoking and playing ping pong are turned on their head when a mysterious alien life form infiltrates their installation. With nowhere to escape to in the frozen continent, they alone stand in between The Thing and the entire human race! And trying to figure out exactly how it works is little difficult. So let's take a look at The Thing. That can be taken in so many ways. Our story begins in space. A flying saucer makes good use of the film's ridiculously huge budget on alien schnapps, as this wobbly-ass spaceship is careening right into Earth. Where on Earth? Antarctica, where we go to meet one of the best acted characters in the film, the Doggo, played by White Fang himself, Jed. The Norwegians in the helicopter, though, aren't the biggest fans. Either that or they saw the Dog Soldiers review as well and aren't taking any chances. The logical result of playing too much Duck Hunt is only half the tale, though. There's the US Research Station 4 to visit. Or 31, depending if you listen to the dialogue or the props. The important thing is we get to watch Kurt Russell do a Let's Play on that super high-tech video chess.
Rook to knight 6. Checkmate.
Cheating bitch.
He's right, you know, that wasn't a checkmate. He was in a pretty shit spot, but it would take more than one move to end the game. The two groups meet soon enough, as the helicopter chase has brought them all the way to the American facility. They greet the dog with open arms, but that's nothing a grenade can't fix.
Eat!
I see. Using the old PlayStation Move controllers. He can talk instead of fighting, but...
Det har ikke en bekjæring. Det er en slags ting. Det imiterer en bekjæring. Det er ikke mekanikk. Kom deg vekk, idioter!
He's Norwegian, which means there's a very high probability that he knows English, but fuck it, Norway represent! Also, he does say some things in Norwegian that would be very helpful for these guys' survival if they knew what he was saying, but he also shot one of them in the leg, so... That's how you do foreign relations the American way. This introduces most of the cast too fast for me to rattle off, so for now I'll just point out Revolver Ocelot over here is the man in charge of the station, Gary, played by Donald Moffat, and Kurt Russell is the group's helicopter pilot, McCready. The man who was shot was Bennings, played by Peter Maloney, and the man tasked with patching him up is Dr. Copper, played by Richard Drysat. They figure the Norwegians maybe just went mad down here, so far from civilization, but it's hard to confirm this as their radio technician, Windows, played by Thomas G. Waits, hasn't been able to contact anyone in weeks. No bother, Chief Scientist Guy Dr. Blair, played by Wilfred Brimley, hasn't given up hope.
Get a hold of somebody. Get a hold of anybody. We gotta report this mess.
Get a hold of Liberty Medical. They can help if you or a loved one has been diagnosed with diabetes. Hollywood career spanning 6 decades and 77 roles, and he will forever be known as Diabetes Man. The chef, Knowles, played by T.K. Carter, roller skates in to point out he's also a streetwise, hip, young member of the team, while David Clennon plays Palmer, the resident stoner every 80s horror movie seems contractually obligated to include. New faces from left to right are Vance, played by Charles Hallahan, Childs, played by Keith David, and Fuchs, played by Joel Polis. Guess that means the only one I missed introducing earlier was that sled dog handler, Clark, played by Richard Mauser. No bother, now that introductions are out of the way, the group decides that Mac and Dr. Copper should head over to that Norwegian base for answers as to why the men came screaming, shooting, and blowing up their own helicopter. The dog, in the meantime, gets to freely roam around the compound, coming and going as it pleases. It's like that jump scared by a friend scene we see in every horror movie except from the other character's perspective. We can get plenty of spooky situations down at the Norwegian science base, though, as when Mac and Doc arrive, they find the place has been burnt to a crisp, looking like some horrible extreme reverse icy hot experiment gone wrong.
My God, what the hell happened here?
Okay, he slit his wrists, and probably unnecessarily, considering his blood was so cold it froze on the way out. It's like he's just sitting there waiting to die, freezing to death. It's like, this is taking too long, I'll do it myself! That's not the only thing the Norwegians were doing out here, though. A scary block of ice. Unfortunately, the ice is empty, and while it's sized and shaped in a nice homage to the ice block from the 1951 movie, the characters don't see anything too significant about it just yet. However, on their way out of the base, they come across the burnt remains of some horrifying, indescribable monstrosity in the snow. So, naturally, they dig it up and haul that motherfucker back with them to show everyone!
We found this.
Jesus Christ. Never seen anything like that before. Grotesque, pungent, and probably carrying all kinds of diseases. So everyone, I want you to gather around and take nice big gasps of air, okay? But let's not forget, they're scientists. Scientists who study all kinds of science down here. Therefore, it's up to Dr. Blair to perform an autopsy and learn everything he can about the creature they found.
Well, what we got here is what appears to be, anyway, a normal set of internal organs. Heart, lungs, kidneys, liver, intestines.
And they all show signs of type 2 onset diabetes. Honestly, Wilford Brimley here was just about the only guy on set who didn't get queasy during the autopsy scene. Gutting enough animals in your life will do that for you. Oh well, while the necromorph fails to impress, Clark is tasked with taking the new dog to the kennel with the rest of them, leaving the creature alone and in the dark, and spending so long with the camera fixated on this mundane task, it shouldn't be surprising to find out things aren't quite what they seem. Okay, maybe time to take him to the vet. That's right, the dog is in fact the Thing, and begins transforming with all kinds of weird new body parts, and attacks the other dogs around him. Obviously, this makes more than a little noise, which causes Clark to come back and check on what's going on, finding a monster where his dogs are supposed to be. He doesn't get to call for help, though. That comes down to Mac hearing the noise and smashing the fire alarm with his beer. By the time everyone gathers around, the beast has changed form quite drastically, and it comes down to Childs rushing in with a flamethrower to take it down. You guys might want to think about letting it roast for a little while longer before running in with the fire extinguishers. I was under the impression you were actually trying to kill it. Somehow it dies, though, which gives us our second body of the Thing for the scientists to examine. Having an idea of its behavior before it was killed means that Blair can make some educated guesses as to what they're dealing with. A strange, unknown organism that mimics other life forms as a means to infiltrate, consume other creatures, and propagate its own survival.
This, for instance. That's not dog. It's imitation.
Nothing but tofu and soy. Trying to find answers means they look over the data that Dr. Copper recovered from the Norwegian base. It seems they found something a few miles from where they were stationed, and dug it up with the help of some motherfucking thermite. Since the tapes don't show what it is they actually found, Mac and friends head back out to find out exactly what it was they dug up. A very large and impressive matte painting. One difference between the original book and this movie is that the spaceship was in 10,000-year-old ice, not 100,000. Also, Norwegians didn't find it. There was no other science team. It was all on these guys. Also, in the book, the thermite explosion destroyed the flying saucer, whereas here, we just see it's in rough shape and they never even go in it to see how it looks, instead heading a little further away from the crash site for yet another shocking revelation. This cutout is a familiar shape. Hearing that the Thing may in fact be from another world, the station erupts in rampant speculation.
Happens all the time, man. They're falling out of the skies like flies. Government knows all about it, right, Mac?
Yeah, it's just like that time someone's family pet transformed into the Blob and killed the entire neighborhood, and the government comes through and tells us all it was just a weather balloon. Suffice to say, they don't know a damn thing about what they're dealing with. Knowles is more concerned with people throwing their shredded underwear into the kitchen trash bins, and the only one with any concept of biology here is Wilford Brimley. So he does what 80s scientists tend to do. Tells his computer alien organism and shit, and the thing spits out some Atari 2600 graphics to explain the plot. The creature eats other creatures, and then imitates them to keep from being detected long enough to safely feed again. If something like this were to reach a populated area, the entire world could be destroyed in a mere 3 years. But don't you worry, Blair's got a 38 special, so that when the end of the world comes, he can have a 38 special. For the time being, it's decided they should store their rotting carcasses in the storage room. Not under ice or anything, which you would think would be pretty easy in Antarctica, but just somewhere they can easily rot, because that'll preserve them when it comes time to win all those science awards for the science done here. Problem is, Blair has locked himself away in his lab, and refuses to come out, and Fuchs has come with some research notes of Blair's that he has to tell Mac at once, as long as it's in secret, completely away from anyone who may benefit from hearing this.
There is still cellular activity in these burned remains. They're not dead yet.
And you brought me out here, alone, and far away from the thing, with all the people around it who may benefit very well from knowing this information. Why? That way, Bennett can be alone with the thing for just long enough to be given the La Blue Girl treatment. But when Windows runs off to ask Mac for help, Bennings has slipped away a whole 40 feet, so they don't have any problem catching up to him, or proving to the rest of the guys he's not who he seems. I'd rather just caught him in the middle of auditioning for Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Mac burns him to death either way. This time, they're quite a bit more thorough with the job, ensuring that every last piece of the thing is burnt to a crisp. That's all well and good, but they can't seem to find where Blair has run off to. Until Mac spots Blair running away from the helicopter, that is. Oh, it's cool. He was just giving the thing one of those Apple firmware updates. The sounds of gunfire get Mac to rush inside, where he finds Blair going absolutely apeshit, wrecking the radio room, Windows wounded in the corner, and the science guy raving on and on about how fucked everything is.
That thing wanted to be on! Still gets out. Imitate everything on the faces here!
And if you listen, it makes perfect sense why he would wreck the helicopter and radio. Well, I mean, the helicopter, the radio hasn't worked all movie, but it's to prevent the thing from reaching a populated area in the first place. Save the world. Kill your coworkers. Don't actually do that. After Childs tries to calm the man, unsuccessfully, Mac rushes in and punches Wilford Brimley the fuck out. As he is now a danger to himself and others, it's decided he should be locked up alone in the shed. He's not so violent anymore after enough sedative, but he still has words of warning for Mac.
Watch Clark. And watch him close, do you hear me?
Okay, now the movie is downright telling us, this is the man you should be suspicious of! Suspect him! With Blair secluded, and nobody watching him, Mac figures they have to do something to weed out who may or may not be things. Problem is, as Childs pointed out, if they are imitated perfectly, how the hell are you supposed to know? Don't worry, Dr. Copper figures a blood test, mixing their blood with uncontaminated blood, might be a way to find out. As if the blood comes from one of these things, there might be a reaction. Problem with this plan is someone already got to the blood, and thus this becomes a contest in who can point the finger away from themselves the fastest, starting with who even had a key to the blood cooler.
I just give it to Copper whenever he needs it.
Could anybody have gotten it from you, Doc?
I don't see how. As soon as I'm finished, I return it right away.
It's one half debate, one half staring contest. In the middle of all the commotion, Windows breaks down and runs off to get a shotgun. This gives Gary a chance to pull out his sidearm again and make everyone even more convinced that he's out of his mind and therefore one of the things. Mac, on the other hand, who is still in control of himself, de-escalates the situation by assuming control as the new leader of the group. After all, he's motherfucking Kurt Russell. With him in charge, they decide to keep a close eye on Gary, Dr. Copper, and Clark, sedating them so they'll be easier to control.
Fuchs, you start working on a new tech.
I need Doc's help.
Yeah, you don't want to drug me.
Dr. Copper also seems to have failed all of those courses about how to not sound extremely suspicious when surrounded by paranoia and death. And then again, he's not the only one who has next to no idea what to do in this kind of situation.
If a small particle of this thing is enough to take over an entire organism, then everyone should prepare their own meals. And I suggest we only eat out of cans.
Yeah, I know that's technically how it works, but what's the hard limit here? Can a cat-sized blob of the thing take over a human-sized prey? Or is a single cell really all you need to eventually do it? Because if it's the latter, then couldn't the thing just run around the base spitting on everyone and eventually win? No bother, they have to check on Blair, but Fuchs finds some suspicious-looking ripped clothes of MacCready's. He's missing around the same time a fuse goes out in the lab, and nobody knows where he is. So not only is the group breaking down, not trusting each other, but when Mac reaches Blair's shed to question him, he's peculiarly chipper.
I'm not gonna harm anybody, and there's nothing wrong with me. And if there was, I'm all better now. I'd like to come back inside. Now, you got my promise.
And can I take my friend Noose here and hang out? Whenever I'm feeling down, he's always there to lift me up. He also ensures that Fuchs isn't someone they should worry about, but they still won't let him come back inside. They have a search to conduct, and they do find Fuchs shortly afterward, burnt to a crisp, but it's him all right. They figure he burnt himself to avoid being eaten by the Thing. One odd thing, though, is Mac's lights are on, and he knows he left them off. Back inside the base, though, they're wondering what's taking so long for the group to return. Eventually, Knowles makes it back, and has quite the story to tell.
Look. It was stashed in his old oil furnace. Wind must have dislodged it, but I don't think he saw me fighting it. I made sure I got ahead of him.
So the one who's been leading the charge for destroying the Thing is actually secretly the Thing. And don't get me wrong, that would be a really good disguise, but you would think if he was the Thing, he might be slightly less enthusiastic about this. Therefore, everyone tries to stop Mac from getting back to safety out of the freezing conditions. This means he has to break through a window and threaten everyone with dynamite in order to get them to stop trying to throw him out. This is still a really stressful situation, obviously, and Vance collapses.
I'm not breathing!
One time, Doc.
Get him in here. And bring the others.
Gather everyone together because this is going to be one hell of a scene. Quite the memorable one, showcasing the work of Rob Bottin and dozens of other people who worked on the special effects makeup for this movie. But as you can tell from me geeking out before anything even happens, this medical emergency doesn't go exactly as the characters anticipated.
Clear!
Clear.
It turns out Vance was the Thing. Or a Thing. There's quite a few of them running around to get away with calling it the. It's not just that shot that makes this a memorable scene for practical effects, but the monster that erupts out of the patient's chest and is subsequently blasted by a motherfucking flamethrower. But it ain't done yet. Breaking off its own head, the Thing slithers away in an attempt to escape, growing a brand new set of legs and eyes to aid it. The Thing almost manages to run off, and then is blasted by even more fiery goodness. Thus, it's toast. But this gives Mac an idea. First things first, he's got to tie some of them down and convince the others not to try to kill him while he's getting everyone ready. And when threatening everyone with dynamite doesn't work, just shoot a motherfucker in the face. Then they all calm down and listen to you. Doesn't really seem to work for me. I mean, I think if I were there, I'd just piss myself and run. After that, he gets everyone to agree to his little game. Everyone but Windows and Mac are tied down, and everyone's blood is collected. Mac says since Vance Thing's head tried to flee to escape, the blood will do the same to try to escape a hot needle. After testing Windows and himself, he determines they are both still human, and continues the tests.
Now, Clark.
And Clark was human, huh? Which makes you a murderer, don't it?
No, Clark was charging at him with a scalpel in hand. I'm pretty sure self-defense is still a thing in Antarctica. No bother, next up is Palmer. One might be wondering why the thing doesn't just tough it out to remain unnoticed, but it is imitating a petri dish full of blood, so it might be a little small for complex thought processes beyond just basic instinct. Having been found out, though, Palmer changes form into a horrifying, split-headed monster. This wouldn't be much of an issue if Mac's firewall wasn't completely devoid of any kinds of quality assurance, but at the end of the day, it's Windows who falls prey to the terrors before them. That means by the time Max Flammenwerfer can Verflammen again, not only does he have to take out Palmer, but Windows shortly after. Okie dokie, back to the blood tests then. Okay, that's it then. Everyone's passed and we can just let bygones be bygones.
I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch!
And that clip is absolutely perfect to describe the situation for anyone suffering from a seasonal flu. I only wish that the channel were actually large enough that I could demand that become a meme and it actually work. There's still one person left who hasn't had their blood tested yet. Wilfred Brimley, surprisingly enough. When they go to the shed, though, not only is he nowhere to be found, but it seems he's dug a secret basement and is building an escape vehicle of his very own.
Where was he trying to go?
Any place but here.
Oh no shit, people don't generally buy airline tickets to spend their weekend sitting at home on the couch eating bonbons. It gets worse. Blair Thing has cut the power to the point where they're all going to freeze to death very soon. It's playing the long game. Freeze itself now so that it may thaw out later when a rescue team arrives. Therefore, Mac decides to take a stand and kill the thing right here and now, with the help of the few survivors he has with him. Together, they burn each room in the base to a crisp, and then head below to set up charges and blow the whole thing sky high. Childs disappears on the surface mysteriously, though, and while they're setting charges... Jesus Christ, it's like he's holding his face Bethesda style. As this is a horror movie, Niles doesn't mention seeing something weird and just quietly sneaks toward his likely death, with Mac none the wiser until our hero is left alone in the cold, dead silence. What the hell was that, Kurt? I don't think insurance fraud works against parasitic extraterrestrial changelings. But this is our final confrontation, and we've got a little less than a minute, so no fight. We have just enough time to show off the monstrosity that is the Thing, before Kurt Russell does him in with a catchy one-liner.
Yeah, fuck you too!
Or that. I guess the dynamite really was the deciding factor in that battle. Therefore, dark ending. The Thing is dead, but Mac is going to be soon anyway. But what's this? Childs came back from just off screen. He seems human enough, but as we know, they always seem human. The end. Question mark? Well, the Thing video game from the 6th generation follows this movie's events right where this leaves off, so no. But in any case, that was The Thing. And believe it or not, critics fucking hated it when it first came out. Not sure about audiences, though. It did do very badly at the box office, but it came out shortly after E.T. and on the same day as Blade Runner. E.T. was taking everyone's money, and Blade Runner did horribly in theaters, but eventually became known as one of the greatest films ever made. I think The Thing likely scored low with critics because it's horror, and that's something a lot of critics don't like. It sounds silly to put it like that, but if you've been watching my show for a while, you know what I mean. Horror is meant to instill a sense of dread and terror in the audience, not make you feel good as you watch a hero save the day. The Thing gives that feeling of dread, not by its very impressive gore and creature effects, but by how it's set up, where you really don't know who you can trust. Part of that is because they simply don't give the information to the viewer to even give you a chance to figure it out. It is something I complain about a lot in so-called mystery movies, but here it works because the point is you can't figure out who it is you can trust, and leaving that kind of information out in the open would hurt the movie's fear factor in the long run. Another effect the lack of information has is the fan novels written trying to theorize exactly who was a thing at what point. I find rampant speculation at that level a bit much, but you gotta admit it gives you plenty to talk about. Overall, The Thing is about a mysterious, indescribable monster that stalks an isolated group in a desolate wasteland. It's not gonna make any critics out there giggle or feel inspired for the strength of the human spirit, but it's going to make you feel uneasy and possibly queasy. Also, with effects this complex, it's more than a disservice to call it cheap shock horror, cause that's expensive as fuck. It also comes in at 5 unspeakably awful, indescribable horrors out of 5. Which is an incredibly safe rating to give this movie these days. It's amazing what a few decades will do for your film. Thank you all for watching. I've been Dr. Shado, and remember, save the world. Kill your coworkers.
I'd rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this fucking couch!